A crushed red Cadillac hides a chilling secret for 15 years. Bones of a father and daughter. Will Rachel uncover the truth? Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to catch our latest gripping stories. The red Cadillac tore through the Oklahoma dawn, its chrome gleaming under a merciless July sun in 1985. Paul, a wiry single father with tired eyes, gripped the steering wheel, his calloused hands steady despite the weight of the world on his shoulders. In the back seat, 8-year-old Lily clutched her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Whiskers, her pigtails swaying as she sang a nursery rhyme. Oblivious to the storm brewing ahead, their road trip from Dallas to Colorado was meant to be a summer escape, 2 weeks of mountain air, Grandpa's stories, and maybe a glimpse of wild elk. Paul glanced at her in the rearview mirror, her infectious giggle easing the ache of his long hours at the factory. "You ready to climb those Rockies, kiddo?" he asked, forcing a smile to mask the gnawing worry of unpaid bills piling up at home. Lily nodded, her eyes bright with dreams of adventure, but the open highway, stretching endless and free, held a darker promise. 30 miles outside Tulsa, a battered pickup truck appeared in Paul's rear view. "It's rusted grille too close." Its driver hidden behind a cracked windshield. Paul's stomach knotted. He eased off the gas, hoping the truck would pass, but it clung to their tail, its engine snarling like a beast. "Just some impatient jerk," he muttered, but his pulse quickened. The Cadillac's speedometer ticked down, and still, the pickup loomed, its bumper nearly kissing theirs. Paul's eyes flicked to Lily, who was now quiet, sensing his tension. "Daddy, why's that truck so close?" she whispered, her voice small. Paul didn't answer, his mind racing. "Keep her safe. Stay calm. Get away." He spotted a flickering neon sign ahead, "Last Stop Fuel," a rundown gas station squatting alone in the dusty plains. He signaled, pulling into the gravel lot, the Cadillac's tires crunching loudly. The pickup followed, parking at an angle that boxed them in, cutting off their escape. Paul's heart thudded as he stepped out to pump gas, his hand lingering on the nozzle, ready to swing it like a club if needed. The pickup's door creaked open, and a man emerged, wiry, mid-30s, in a stained denim jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. His name, they'd later learn, was Mickey. His boots scuffed the gravel as he approached, a predatory smirk twisting his lips. "Sweet ride," Mickey drawled, his voice slick with menace, eyes raking over the Cadillac's curves. "Bet she's worth a fortune." Paul squared his shoulders, stepping between Mickey and the car where Lily peered out, wide-eyed. "Just passing through," Paul said, his tone flat but firm, every muscle coiled. Mickey tilted his head, his gaze lingering on Lily before snapping back to Paul. "Sell her to me. Cash. Right now. Name your price." The words hung heavy, less an offer than a demand. Paul's jaw clenched. "Not for sale," he snapped, his voice low, daring Mickey to push further. The air crackled. In the gas station's lone clerk, a teenager with a Walkman, oblivious inside the booth. Mickey's smirk faded, his eyes narrowing to slits. "Wrong choice. Friend," he hissed, stepping closer, his breath sour with whiskey and malice. Paul's grip tightened on the nozzle, but Mickey backed off, sauntering to his truck. His parting glance, a promise of trouble. Paul hustled Lily back into the car, locking the doors, his hands trembling as he jammed the key into the ignition. The Cadillac roared to life, and he peeled out, gravel spraying, the pickup's headlights flaring in pursuit. Lily whimpered, clutching Mr. Whiskers. "Daddy." "He's following us," she cried, her voice breaking. Paul's eyes darted to the rear view, where the pickup surged closer, its engine a guttural roar. The highway was a desolate ribbon. "No cars. No help." Just the two of them against the relentless shadow behind. "Hold on, sweetheart," Paul said, his voice steady for her sake, though fear clawed his chest. He floored the gas, the Cadillac leaping forward, its V8 engine screaming as the speedometer climbed past 80. The pickup matched their pace, swerving aggressively, its bumper grazing their rear. Paul's mind flashed to the rumors of carjackings in these parts, of travelers vanishing without a trace. He couldn't let that happen to Lily. A sharp curve loomed ahead, marked by a faded sign. "Brace yourself," Paul shouted, yanking the wheel. The Cadillac skidded, tires screeching, gravel flying as they veered toward a ditch. Lily screamed, and the world spun a blur of dust, metal, and terror. The pickup clipped their bumper, the impact jarring, sending them fishtailing. Paul fought the wheel, muscles burning, and righted the car, the Cadillac lurching back onto the asphalt. The pickup fell back, its headlights dimming in the dust cloud. But Paul knew they weren't safe. He pushed the car harder, the engine straining. As night swallowed the highway, a rural turnoff flickered past, barely visible in the fog rolling in. Paul's breath came in ragged gasps, his eyes scanning for salvation. A town, a patrol car, anything. But the pickup's lights reappeared, closer now, relentless. Lily's sobs filled the car, each one a knife to Paul's heart. He reached back, squeezing her hand. "We're gonna be okay." He lied, praying it was true. The Cadillac sped into the unknown, its red paint a fading beacon in the Oklahoma night. Somewhere in that darkness, a trap was closing, and the father and daughter who dreamed of mountains would vanish, their fate sealed in a mystery that would fester for 15 years. The Tulsa sun beat down on Rachel's beat-up Toyota Corolla as she pulled into the last-stop fuel gas station, its neon sign now faded and cracked, a relic of the 1985 summer when Paul and Lily vanished. It was August 2000, and Rachel, a 27-year-old journalist with a knack for digging up buried stories, felt a chill despite the heat. Her mother's old employee records from a Dallas factory had led her here. Paul, as a co-worker, had disappeared with his daughter during a road trip, leaving behind whispers of debt and betrayal. Rachel wasn't convinced. The case file, gathering dust in a police archive, labeled it a voluntary disappearance, but her gut screamed otherwise. She parked near the rusted pumps, her notebook open to a scribbled note, Paul's credit card, last used near Tulsa, July 85. The station looked abandoned, its windows grimy, the air thick with the scent of oil and neglect. Rachel stepped out, her sneakers crunching on gravel, her dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail. She adjusted her glasses, scanning the lot for clues, her journalist's instinct buzzing. The clerk, a middle-aged man with a graying beard, lounged inside, flipping through a magazine. Rachel approached, her voice steady but probing. "Hey, you been here long like?" Back in the 80s, the clerk squinted, sizing her up. "Long enough. What's it to you?" Rachel leaned in. "Undeterred. I'm looking into an old case. Red Cadillac. Father and daughter. Stopped here in 85. Ring any bells?" The clerk's eyes flickered, a shadow crossing his face, but he shrugged. "Lots of cars came through. Don't remember no Cadillac." Rachel didn't buy it. She slipped him a 20, a voice low. "Anything at all. A receipt. A log. Maybe a name." He pocketed the cash, glancing nervously at the empty lot. "Check the old storage shed out back. Used to keep receipts there, but don't expect much." Rachel nodded, her pulse quickening. The shed, half hidden behind a pile of tires, was a sagging metal box. Its door rustet shut. She pried it open with a crowbar from her trunk, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, dust motes danced in slants of sunlight, and stacks of moldy boxes lined the walls. She tore through them, her hands smudged with grime, until she found a ledger marked 1985. Her heart raced as she flipped to July, her finger tracing faded ink. There it was, red Cadillac. TX plate. 14/7/85. Shah. 63 gas. Paid by card. Below it, a scribbled note. Driver argued with guy in pickup. Shady type. Rachel's breath caught. This was no voluntary disappearance. Something had gone down here. She snapped a photo of the page with her disposable camera, her mind racing. Who was the guy in the pickup, and why hadn't the police followed this lead? As she stuffed the ledger into her bag, a low rumble broke the silence. A black SUV pulling into the lot, its tinted windows gleaming ominously. Rachel froze, crouching behind the shed's door. The SUV idled, its engine a menacing purr, then cut off. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, his face obscured by a baseball cap. He scanned the lot, his movements deliberate. Like a hunter, Rachel's heart pounded. She hadn't told anyone she was coming here. Only her editor knew about the story. The man spoke to the clerk, his voice muffled but sharp, and the clerk pointed toward the shed. Rachel's blood ran cold. She slipped out the back, clutching the ledger, and ducked behind a stack of oil drums, her breath shallow. The man's boots crunched closer, pausing just feet away. "You sure nobody's been snooping?" he growled, his voice low and threatening. The clerk stammered, "No, just some kids sometimes." The man grunted, unconvinced, and Rachel heard the click of a lighter, then the acrid smell of cigarette smoke. She peeked through a gap, memorizing his build, 6-foot-something, leather jacket, a scar on his knuckles. He wasn't Mickey. She'd seen photos of the junkyard worker in old articles, and this guy was bigger, meaner. Was he covering for someone? Rachel waited, her muscles aching, until the man returned to his SUV and peeled out, gravel flying. She exhaled, her hands trembling, but her resolve hardened. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was personal. Back at her motel room, Rachel pored over the ledger, cross-referencing it with Paul's credit card records. She'd sweet-talked from a bank contact. The card had been cancelled days after the gas station stop, with one final charge at a diner near a junkyard outside Tulsa. Her mother's words echoed, "Paul was a good guy." Rachel. He'd never run off with Lily. Rachel believed her. She dialed her editor, her voice urgent. "I've got something big. A lead on the Cadillac case. But someone's watching me. Here, editor." A gruff ex-cop didn't mince words. "Get what you need and get out. People don't like their secrets dug up." Rachel hung up, her eyes on the ledger. The diner was her next stop, but the SUV's shadow lingered. That night, she double-checked her motel door's lock, her sleep fractured by nightmares of a red Cadillac swallowed by darkness. As dawn broke, Rachel packed her bag, the ledger tucked safely inside. She didn't know who the man in the SUV was or what he wanted, but one thing was clear. The truth about Paul and Lily was buried deep, and someone was desperate to keep it that way. Her Toyota roared to life, heading toward the diner, toward answers, toward danger. The Tulsa junkyard sprawled like a graveyard of forgotten machines, its jagged piles of twisted metal glinting under a sliver of moonlight in August 2000. Rachel crouched behind a rusted oil drum, her breath shallow, the crowbar in her hand, slick with sweat. She'd come here after a tip from a diner waitress who remembered Paul's red Cadillac, parked near this very junkyard in July 1985, just days before it vanished. But it was the call from her police contact that set her heart racing. A junkyard worker, clearing scrap for a new lot, had pried open a crushed car, a red Cadillac, mangled beyond recognition, and found human bones and a child's blue shoe in the wreckage. Rachel's mind reeled. Paul and Lily. It had to be them. The police were waiting for DNA results, but Rachel couldn't wait. She needed answers now. The junkyard's chain-link fence loomed ahead, topped with barbed wire. A no trespassing sign rattling in the night breeze. Her flashlight beam danced across the uneven ground as she scanned for a way in. The distant hum of a highway was the only sound, but every rustle made her flinch. The memory of the black SUV's driver still fresh. She found a gap where the fence sagged, just wide enough to slip through. Her jacket snagged on a jagged edge, tearing as she wriggled free, her sneakers sinking into the muddy earth. Inside, the junkyard was a maze of crushed cars and rotting tires, the air heavy with the stench of oil and decay. Rachel's pulse thundered as she moved deeper, her flashlight catching glints of shattered glass and warped steel. She followed the worker's vague directions. Third row, near the compactor, and there it was, the red Cadillac, or what was left of it. Its once sleek frame was flattened to a pancake, its chrome twisted into grotesque shapes. The police had cordoned it off with yellow tape, but the scene was unguarded. The investigation still in its infancy. Rachel ducked under the tape, her stomach churning as she peered into the wreckage. The interior was a mangled mess, but she spotted a tiny blue shoe, scuffed and faded, wedged in the rear. Lily's shoe. Her throat tightened, picturing the 8-year-old clutching her stuffed rabbit, her father fighting to protect her. She snapped a photo, the flash stark against the darkness, then turned her light to the ground, searching for anything the police might have missed. A glint caught her eye, a rusted keychain, half buried in the dirt, engraved with P and L forever. Paul and Lily. She pocketed it, her resolve hardening. This wasn't an accident. Someone had hidden this car, hidden them. Rachel's next target was the junkyard's office, a squat trailer perched on cinder blocks at the lot's edge. If there were records of the Cadillac's arrival, they'd be there. She crept through the shadows, dodging pools of light from flickering flood lamps. A guard dog's bark erupted nearby, freezing her in place, but it faded into a whine, chained somewhere out of sight. The trailer's door was locked, but the window was cracked open, just enough for her to jimmy it with her crowbar. She climbed inside, landing softly on a linoleum floor littered with cigarette butts. The office was a mess, overturned chairs, stacks of yellowed papers, a flickering fluorescent bulb casting eerie shadows. Rachel rifled through filing cabinets, her hands shaking as she scanned for 1,985 records. Most were mundane car parts, scrap sales, but one folder, tucked behind a stack of invoices, caught her eye. Unclaimed vehicles. Bashawu. She opened it, her breath hitching. A single page listed a red Cadillac, TX plate, received 7, divided by 16, divided by 85. No owner ID. The entry was handwritten, the ink smudged, but a notation in red caught her attention, processed per M. Instructions, no questions. Mickey. The name burned in her mind. The same man from old articles about the junkyard, the one who'd worked here in 85. Why was his name on this? And why no questions? Rachel's fingers trembled as she photographed the page, her camera's click deafening in the silence. A sudden thud outside snapped her head up. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, crunched toward the trailer. She killed her flashlight, dropping to the floor behind a desk, her heart slamming against her ribs. The door rattled, then creaked open, a beam of light sweeping the room. "Who's in here?" a gruff voice growled. Unmistakably male. Not the SUV driver, but someone new, maybe a night guard. Rachel held her breath. The crowbar gripped tight, her mind racing. The man stepped inside, his boots scuffing the floor, his flashlight grazing the desk's edge. She could smell his sweat, hear his muttered curses. "Damn kids, always sneaking in," he grumbled. But his tone carried an edge of suspicion. Rachel's muscles screamed as she stayed still, praying he'd leave. The man lingered, kicking a chair, then finally turned, his footsteps fading as he exited. Rachel exhaled, her body trembling. But she wasn't done. She stuffed the folder into her jacket, crawled to the window, and slipped out, her sneakers silent on the gravel. She was halfway to the fence when a spotlight blazed, pinning her in its glare. "Stop right there," the guard shouted, his voice sharp, a shotgun's click echoing in the night. Rachel bolted, zigzagging through the car piles, her lungs burning. The guard fired, the blast deafening, pellets shredding a nearby fender. She dove behind a stack of tires, her hands scraping raw, the folder slipping but still clutched tight. The guard's shouts grew closer, his flashlight sweeping wildly. Rachel scrambled to the fence, squeezing through the gap as another shot rang out, splintering a post inches from her head. She stumbled into the darkness beyond, sprinting to her Corolla, hidden down the road. Her hands shook as she started the engine, peeling out without headlights, the junkyard's lights fading in her rear view. Back at her motel, Rachel locked the door. Her body bruised but adrenaline pumping. She spread the folder's contents on the bed, the red notation glaring M. Instructions. Mickey had orchestrated this, hidden the car. Maybe the bodies. But why? And who else knew? The keychain lay beside the papers. P and L forever. A silent plea for justice. Rachel's eyes burned with tears, but her jaw set firm. She was closer to the truth. But the junkyard's shadows were closing in, and someone, maybe Mickey, maybe the SUV driver, was watching her every move. Rachel's Toyota rattled down a desolate Oklahoma back road. The Tulsa skyline, a faint smudge on the horizon as dusk bled into night in August 2000. The folder from the junkyard, with its damning M. Instructions note, lay on the passenger seat, its weight heavier than paper. Mickey, once a grunt at the junkyard, now a ghost in the system, was her target. A tip from a retired cop had led her here, to a ramshackle trailer park on the outskirts of Sepulpa, where Mickey was said to live, a recluse, dodging questions. And the law. Rachel's hands gripped the wheel, her knuckles white, the memory of the junkyard guard's shotgun blast still echoing in her ears. She'd barely slept. Her motel room, a fortress of locked doors and drawn curtains, but the keychain inscribed P and L forever burned in her pocket. A reminder of Paul and Lily's fate. She wasn't just chasing a story anymore. She was chasing justice. The trailer park emerged from the darkness, a cluster of sagging metal boxes surrounded by weeds and broken-down cars. Rachel parked a quarter-mile away, her Corolla hidden behind a copse of scrub oaks. She slipped on a dark jacket, tucked her flashlight and a pocket knife into her belt, and moved silently toward the park, her sneakers crunching softly on gravel. Mickey's trailer, number 17, was at the far end, its windows boarded. A rusted pickup parked out front. The air was thick with the scent of motor oil and desperation. Rachel crouched behind a dumpster, her heart pounding as she studied the trailer. A faint glow leaked through a crack in the boards, and the low hum of a radio drifted out, playing a twangy country tune. She needed to get inside, find something, anything that tied Mickey to the Cadillac's destruction. But first, she needed to know if he was alone. She edged closer, her breath shallow, when a shadow moved inside, tall and wiry, pacing like a caged animal. Mickey. Rachel's pulse spiked, but she forced herself to stay calm, waiting for an opening. The radio cut off abruptly, replaced by the creak of a door. Mickey stepped onto the porch, a cigarette dangling from his lips, his denim jacket stained with grease. He was older now, his face gaunt, but his eyes held the same predatory glint she'd imagined from the 1985 gas station encounter. He scanned the lot, his gaze lingering on the shadows where Rachel hid. She froze, her body pressed against the dumpster's cold metal. Praying he'd look away. He flicked his cigarette into the dirt and muttered something, then ducked back inside. Rachel exhaled, her muscles aching from tension. She had to move fast. She crept to the trailer's side, finding a loose board over a window. With her pocket knife, she pried it free, the wood splintering softly. The gap was just wide enough to slip through. She climbed in, landing on a cluttered floor strewn with empty beer cans and yellowed newspapers. The trailer reeked of stale smoke and unwashed clothes. A single bulb swung overhead, casting jagged shadows across a table piled with junk wrenches, car parts, and, chillingly, a faded photo of a red Cadillac, its chrome gleaming under a long-ago sun. Rachel's stomach twisted. Was this Paul's car? She snapped a picture, her camera's click deafening in the silence, then rifled through the papers. A crumpled note caught her eye, scrawled in pencil: 7 divided by 14 divided by 85. Guy wouldn't sell. Told him he regretted. Her blood ran cold. This was it, proof Mickey had targeted Paul. She stuffed the note into her jacket, her mind flashing to that summer day, To Paul's refusal at the gas station, to the chase that ended in tragedy, a sudden crash shattered her thoughts. The trailer door slammed open, and Mickey loomed in the frame, his eyes wild, a tire iron in his hand. "Who the hell are you?" he snarled, his voice a low growl. Stepping toward her, Rachel's heart lurched, but she stood her ground, her hand on the pocket knife. "I know what you did," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. "The Cadillac. Paul and Lily, you crushed them." Mickey's face twisted, a mix of rage and panic. "You don't know nothing." He spat, but his eyes darted to the table, to the photo. Rachel seized the moment, stepping closer, her voice sharp. "I have the junkyard records. Your name's all over them. Why do you do it?" "Mickey." "Because he wouldn't sell you the car." Mickey's grip tightened on the tire iron, his breath ragged. "That car was mine." He hissed, his voice cracking. "I offered him good money." He laughed in my face. "Like I was trash. Nobody disrespects me like that." Rachel's mind raced, piecing it together: pride, rejection, a twisted need for control. She edged toward the window, her body tensed. "So you killed them? A father and his little girl?" Over a char, Mickey's face darkened, and he lunged, the tire iron swinging. Rachel doviaside, the metal grazing her shoulder, pain flaring as she hit the floor. She scrambled up, yanking the pocket knife free, but Mickey was faster, grabbing her arm, his fingers like a vice. "You're gonna end up like them," he growled, his breath hot on her face. Rachel twisted, driving her knee into his groin. He grunted, loosening his grip, and she slashed the knife across his hand, drawing blood. Mitskiroared, stumbling back, and Rachel bolted for the window, diving through the gap as the tire iron crashed into the wall behind her. She hit the ground hard, her shoulder throbbing, and sprinted toward the trees. Mickey's curses echoing behind. His pickup's engine roared to life, headlights slicing through the dark as he gave chase. Rachel zigzagged through the park, dodging trailers. Here, lungs burning, she reached her Corolla, fumbling the keys as Mickey's truck bore down, its bumper gleaming like a predator's teeth. She floored the gas, the Toyota lurching onto the road, Mickey's headlights glaring in her rear view. The chase stretched for miles, his truck swerving to ram her, but Rachel's quick turns kept her just out of reach. Finally, a highway patrol car's lights flashed ahead, and Mickey's truck veered off, vanishing into the night. Rachel pulled over, her body shaking, the note and photo still clutched in her jacket. Mickey's words burned in her mind. That car was mine. She'd escaped. But the truth was closer and more dangerous than ever. Back at her motel, she taped her shoulder, her eyes on the evidence. Mickey wasn't just a suspect. He was a killer, and she was his next target. Rachel's motel room in Tulsa was a fortress of paranoia, the deadbolt locked, curtains drawn tight against the August 2000 night, the folder from the junkyard, the photo of the red Cadillac from Mickey's trailer, and the scrawled note 7 divided by 14 divided by 85. Guy wouldn't sell, told him he'd regret it. Lay spread across the bed, each piece a shard of the truth about Paul and Lily's fate. Her shoulder throbbed from Mickey's attack, the bruise a dull ache under her taped bandage. But Rachel's mind was razor sharp, fueled by adrenaline and the weight of the keychain in her pocket. Etched with P and L forever, she'd escaped Mickey's tire iron and his roaring pickup, but the chase had left her shaken. The highway patrol's timely appearance, her only salvation. Now, back in the dim light of her room, she pored over the junkyard's unclaimed vehicles. 85 record. The red notation processed per M. Instructions. No questions burning in her vision. Mickey had orchestrated the Cadillac's destruction, but how had it gone unnoticed? And who else was involved? Rachel's next move was clear: verify the record's authenticity and find out who M really was. She suspected Mickey, but the stakes were too high for assumptions. She needed hard evidence to force the police to act. Her first stop was the Tulsa County Clerk's office. where old property and business records might shed light on the junkyard's operations in 1985. She drove her Toyota Corolla at dawn, her eyes scanning the rear view for the black SUV that had stalked her at the gas station. The clerk's office was a bureaucratic maze, its fluorescent lights buzzing over stacks of dusty ledgers. Rachel, armed with a fake press pass to smooth her way, charmed a bored clerk into pulling junkyard permits from the 80s. The records confirmed Mickey worked there in 1985, listed as a laborer, but a second name caught her eye: Marvin Tate, the junkyard's manager, who'd signed off on vehicle intakes. Tate was long retired, living in a nursing home, but his signature matched the M on the junkyard note. Rachel's pulse quickened. Was Tate complicit, or just a pawn? She photographed the documents. Her camera's click a small victory, but as she left, a prickle of unease hit her. A man lingered across the street, his baseball cap low, his build eerily familiar: scarred knuckles, leather jacket. The SUV driver. Rachel's heart raced, but she kept her pace steady. Slipping into her car and locking the doors, she pulled out, watching him in her mirror as he climbed into a sedan, not the SUV, and followed at a distance. She wove through morning traffic, taking sharp turns to lose him, her tires squealing as she merged onto a highway. The sedan vanished. But Rachel's nerves were frayed. Someone was closing in. Back at the motel, she cross-referenced the junkyard record with a contact at the DMV, who dug up a bombshell: the Cadillac's VIN, listed in the 1985 junkyard log, had been altered 2 digits, swapped to mask its origin. This wasn't sloppy paperwork. It was deliberate fraud. Rachel's mind raced. Mickey, or someone above him, had erased the car's identity to bury Paul and Lily's deaths. She needed to confront Tate, but first, she had to secure her evidence. She scanned the documents and emailed them to her editor, a gruff ex-cop who'd warned her about digging too deep. "You're poking a hornet's nest," he replied. "Watch your back." His words proved prophetic. That night, Rachel returned to her motel to find her room trashed, drawers yanked open, her notebook gone, the folder's contents scattered. Her laptop was intact, but the scanned files were deleted, the hard drive wiped. Panic surged, but she checked her bag. The original documents, hidden in a secret pocket, were safe. Her car, however, wasn't. The tires were slashed, the windshield spiderwebbed. A brick lying in the glass's wreckage, scrawled on the hood in spray paint: "Stop now." Rachel's blood boiled, fear giving way to defiance. She called a tow truck, rented a new car, a nondescript Ford, and moved to a different motel. Her every move calculated. The sabotage, screamed Mickey, or someone protecting him. But Rachel wasn't backing down. She tracked Tate to a nursing home in Broken Arrow, a squat building smelling of antiseptic and regret. Tate, frail and wheelchair-bound, eyed her warily as she introduced herself as a reporter. "I'm looking into an old junkyard case," she said, her voice calm but probing. "A red Cadillac. 1985. You signed the intake. What happened?" Tate's hands trembled, his eyes darting to the door. "Don't know nothing," he muttered, but his voice cracked. Rachel leaned in, her tone firm. "Your signature's on a forged record." "Marvin." Mickey crushed that car with people inside. "Help me, or I tell the police you were in on it." Tate's face crumpled, tears welling. "I didn't know," he whispered. Mickey said it was just a car. "No questions. He paid me to look the other way. I needed the money." Rachel's heart sank, but she pressed on. Who else knew? Tate shook his head. "Just Mickey. He was mean, dangerous. Said he'd handled it." Rachel recorded his words on a hidden tape, her hands steady, despite the weight of his confession. As she left, a nurse pulled her aside. "Be careful," she whispered. "Some guy was here yesterday, asking about you." "By gooey." Scarred hands. Rachel's stomach dropped. The SUV driver. She drove back to Tulsa, her new rental car weaving through back roads to avoid tails. At a payphone, she called her police contact. a detective named Harris. I've got a forged junkyard log and a witness tying Mickey to the Cadillac," she said, her voice urgent. "You need to reopen the case." Harris hesitated. "That's big. Rachel. But Mickey's slippery. Get me something ironclad." Like a confession, Rachel hung up. Her jaw set. She had Tate's story, the altered VIN, and Mickey's note, but it wasn't enough. She needed to bait Mickey, to make him slip. Back at her new motel, she spread out her evidence. The keychain glinting under the lamp. The room felt like a trap, every creak a threat. But Rachel's resolve burned brighter than her fear. She was closing in on Mickey, but the sabotage told her he or his allies were closing in too. Her next move would be her boldest yet, a gamble that could expose the killer or bury her alongside Paul and Lily. Rachel's hands trembled as she adjusted the tiny tape recorder hidden in her jacket pocket, its red light blinking faintly in the dim Tulsa diner, where the smell of burnt coffee and grease hung heavy in the August 2000 air. It was a risky plan, but she had no choice. The forged junkyard log, Marvin Tate's confession, and Mickey's own damning note, 7 divided by 14 divided by 85. Guy wouldn't sell. Told him he'd regret it weren't enough for a conviction. Not without Mickey's own words, sealing his guilt. Detective Harris had been clear. Get me a confession. Rachel. Or he walks. She'd tracked Mickey to this diner, a dive called Rusty's, where he'd been spotted drinking alone. His pickup parked crookedly out front. Rachel's rented Ford idled a block away, her evidence stashed in a lockbox under the seat, the keychain etched with P and L forever, a constant weight in her pocket. Her shoulder still ached from Mickey's attack at his trailer, but fear had no place. Now only resolve. She stepped into the diner, her boots sticking to the grimy floor, and spotted Mickey in a corner booth, his gaunt face shadowed under his baseball cap, a whiskey glass sweating in his hand. Rachel slid into the booth across from him, her heart pounding, but her face a mask of calm. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low, eyes locked on his. Mickey's gaze snapped up, his lips curling into a sneer. "You again," he growled, his voice rough with booze and suspicion. "Thought I taught you to stay away." Rachel leaned forward, unfazed, her recorder running silently. "I know everything. Mickey, the Cadillac, Paul, Lily. You crushed them in that junkyard. I've got the records. Tate's story. Your note, it's over." Mickey's hand tightened around the glass, his knuckles whitening, but a flicker of panic crossed his eyes. "You're bluffing." He spat, but his voice wavered. Rachel pressed harder, her tone sharp. "Am I? The police are digging into the junkyard. Now, they'll find the compactor logs, your fingerprints. Why do you do it? Mickey, tell me, and maybe I can help you cut a deal." It was a lie. She had no pull with the cops, but Mickey didn't know that. His face twisted, a mix of rage and fear, and he leaned closer, his breath sour. "You want to know?" He hissed, his voice barely a whisper. "I crushed that car because he disrespected me, laughed in my face. I followed him, waited till night, and handled it. Crushed it with him inside. Nobody knew. Nobody cared." Rachel's blood ran cold, but she kept her composure, the recorder capturing every word. "You killed a father and his little girl," she said, her voice steady despite the horror. For a car, Mickey's eyes glazed. His voice distant. "Wasn't just a car. It was mine. Should have been mine." He slammed the glass down, whiskey sloshing, and Rachel knew she had enough. She stood, her hand brushing the recorder to stop it, but Mickey's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "You're not walking out of here," he snarled. His grip like iron. Rachel twisted free, her other hand yanking a pepper spray canister from her pocket. She sprayed, the mist hitting Mickey's face, and he roared, clawing at his eyes. Rachel bolted for the door, the diner's few patrons staring as she sprinted to her Ford. Mickey stumbled out, cursing, and jumped into his pickup, its engine roaring to life. Rachel floored the gas, her car lurching onto the highway. Mickey's headlights glaring in her rear view. The chase was on, a high-stakes replay of their last encounter, but this time, Rachel had his confession. She weaved through late-night traffic, her tires screeching, Mickey's pickup swerving to ram her. A sharp turn sent her skidding onto a rural road, dust billowing, and Mickey's bumper clipped her rear. The impact, jarring. Rachel's hands gripped the wheel, her mind racing, keep moving, get to the police. She spotted a gas station ahead, its lights a beacon, and swerved into its lot, honking wildly to draw attention. Mickey's pickup screeched to a stop, but before he could pursue, a police cruiser pulled in, its siren blaring. Rachel leapt from her car, waving the recorder. "He confessed," she shouted to the officer, a young cop with a wary look. "Mickey killed 2 people in '85, it's all here, Mickey." Still rubbing his eyes, froze, his pickup idling. The cop drew his gun, ordering Mickey out, but Mickey gunned the engine, tires screaming as he tore onto the road. The officer radioed for backup, and Rachel watched, heart pounding, as more cruisers joined the pursuit, their lights flashing into the night. The chase stretched across Tulsa's outskirts, Mickey's pickup weaving through back roads, police cars closing in. Rachel followed in her Ford, her recorder clutched tight. The confession, her lifeline. On a narrow bridge, Mickey's truck swerved, clipping a guardrail, and spun out, crashing into a ditch. Officers swarmed, guns drawn, dragging Mickey from the wreckage, his hands cuffed as he cursed and spat. Rachel pulled over, her body trembling, and handed the recorder to Detective Harris, who'd arrived on the scene. "You got him," Harris said, his voice gruff but impressed. As he played the tape, Mickey's chilling words echoing, "I crushed it with him inside." Rachel's knees buckled, relief and exhaustion hitting hard. Mickey was in custody, his confession airtight, but questions gnawed at her. Who was the SUV driver? Still out there, watching her. And why had Mickey been so obsessed with the Cadillac? She drove back to her motel, the keychain in her pocket, a silent reminder of Paul and Lily's lost lives. Harris promised a full investigation, but Rachel knew the truth was still incomplete. Mickey's arrest was a victory, a step toward justice, but the shadows around the case were deep, and someone, maybe the scarred-knuckled man, wanted them to stay buried. Rachel locked her door, the recorder's tape now in Harris's hands, but she kept a copy, her insurance against whoever was still out there. She lay awake, the diner's confrontation replaying in her mind, Mickey's voice, a haunting echo nobody knew, nobody cared. But Rachel cared, and she wasn't done. The fight for Paul and Lily was far from over, and the next move would test her like never before. The Tulsa courtroom buzzed with tension, its wooden benches packed with reporters, locals, and curious onlookers, their whispers a low hum under the fluorescent lights in November 2000. Rachel sat in the witness stand, her hands clasped tightly, the keychain etched with P and L forever, hidden in her pocket, a talisman against the storm of the trial. Mickey sat at the defense table, his gaunt frame hunched in a cheap suit, his eyes boring into her with a venom that made her skin crawl. The tape of his confession, "I crushed it with him inside," had sparked a media frenzy, turning the cold case of Paul and Lily's disappearance into a national obsession. Rachel's evidence, the forged junkyard log, Marvin Tate's testimony, the damning note from Mickey's trailer, had built an airtight case, but the defense was fighting dirty, painting Mickey as a misunderstood loner, and Rachel as an overzealous reporter chasing fame. She ignored the smears, her focus razor-sharp, but the weight of the past month's break-ins, chases, the ever-present shadow of the scarred-knuckled SUV driver pressed heavily on her shoulders. The prosecutor, a steely woman named Carla Evans, called Rachel to testify, her voice cutting through the room's din. "Miss Carter, please describe how you obtained the defendant's confession." Rachel took a breath, her voice steady despite Mickey's glare. "I confronted him at Rusty's Diner, August 2000. I had evidence tying him to the 1,985 junkyard cover-up. He admitted to crushing Paul and Lily's Cadillac with them inside, out of spite for Paul's refusal to sell the car. The courtroom gasped, and Mickey's lawyer objected, but the judge, a grizzled veteran, overruled. His eyes narrowing at Mickey, Rachel continued, detailing the forged VIN, Tate's complicity, and the junkyard's altered records, each word a brick in the wall of justice. But as she spoke, her mind flashed to the night she'd pieced together, a night she hadn't witnessed but felt in her bones, reconstructed from evidence and Mickey's own words. It was the 14th of July, 1985. The Oklahoma highway cloaked in fog, the red Cadillac's headlights slicing through the dark. Paul drove, his jaw tight. Lily, asleep in the back seat, her stuffed rabbit clutched close. Mickey's pickup had trailed them since the gas station, his rage simmering after Paul's rejection. At a rural turnoff, Mitzgistruk, ramming the Cadillac's rear, forcing it off the road into a ditch. Paul fought to restart the car, his voice hoarse as he shouted, "Lily, stay down." Lily's screams pierced the night as Mickey approached, a tire iron in hand, his face twisted with malice. Paul lunged from the car, tackling Mickey, the two men grappling in the mud, fists flying. Paul landed a blow, splitting Mickey's lip, but Mickey was relentless, swinging the iron, catching Paul's temple. Paul crumpled, blood pooling, and Lily's cries grew frantic. Mickey, panting, dragged Paul back to the Cadillac, tossing him into the driver's seat, then grabbed Lily, ignoring her kicks, and shoved her into the back. He drove the car to the junkyard, its gates unguarded at midnight, and used the compactor. The machine's groan drowning out any sound from within. The Cadillac became a metal tomb, buried among scrap. Mickey's secret safe or so, he thought. Rachel snapped back to the courtroom, her throat tight, the imagined scene searing her mind. She finished her testimony, her voice unwavering despite the tears threatening to spill. Mickey killed them for pride. She said, "He admitted it, and I recorded it." The tape played, Mickey's voice chilling the room. "I crushed it with them inside." Nobody knew. Jurors shifted, some visibly shaken, as Mickey's lawyer scrambled, claiming coercion, but the evidence was ironclad. Rachel stepped down, her legs unsteady, Mickey's stare following her like a blade. The trial stretched over days, each witness Marvin Tate, trembling but honest, the junkyard worker who found the bones, the coroner confirming Paul and Lily's DNA, tightening the noose. Mickey took the stand, his story a tangle of lies, claiming he'd only crushed an empty car, but his nervous tics betrayed him. Rachel watched, her heart pounding, as the prosecution played the tape again. Mickey's own words, his undoing. Closing arguments came, Carla Evans's voice ringing with conviction. This man stole a father and daughter's lives over a petty grudge. Justice demands accountability. The defense faltered, and the jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Rachel waited in the courthouse hall, her editor at her side, his gruff voice soft for once. "You did good. Kid, they'll get him." The verdict came at dusk, guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted, reporters scrambling. Mickey's face ashen as he was cuffed, his eyes finding Rachel one last time, a promise of vengeance in their depths. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. The gavels crack a thunderclap of closure. Rachel exhaled, relief flooding her, but the victory felt hollow. She'd won justice for Paul and Lily, but the cost was etched in her sleepless nights, her paranoia, the scars on her body and soul. Outside, camera swarmed, microphones thrust in her face, but Rachel slipped away. Driving to a quiet park, the keychain in her hand, she sat on a bench, the autumn wind cold, and let herself cry for Paul, for Lily, for the innocents lost in that junkyard. The trial had exposed the truth, but questions lingered. The SUV driver, never identified, haunted her thoughts. Was he Mickey's accomplice? Or something else? Rachel's editor called, urging her to write the story, to turn her notes into a book. She nodded, her resolve rekindling. The fight wasn't over, not until every shadow was lit. Back at her motel, she pulled out her laptop, the cursor blinking on a blank page. She typed the first line in July 1985. A red Cadillac carried a father and daughter into a darkness that would hide them for 15 years. The words flowed, each one a tribute to Paul and Lily. Echon, a step toward healing. Mickey was behind bars, but Rachel knew the truth was a living thing, demanding to be told, and she would tell it, no matter the cost. Rachel's fingers hovered over the laptop keys, the cursor blinking on the final page of her manuscript in a quiet Tulsa cafe. The December 2000 chill seeping through the window. The words stared back, the red Cadillac, buried truths. A title that carried the weight of Paul and Lily's lost lives, of Mickey's conviction, of her own scars, physical and otherwise. The keychain etched with P and L forever sat beside her coffee, its worn metal a silent anchor. Mickey's life sentence had closed the case, but the shadows of the past months, the trashed motel room, the slashed tires, the scarred-knuckled man in the black SUV still haunted her. She'd poured everything into the book, the junkyard secrets, the forged VIN, Marvin Tate's trembling confession, Mickey's chilling admission in the diner. Writing it had been her catharsis, a way to honor the father and daughter who'd vanished in 1985. Their red Cadillac a tomb, until she'd forced the truth into the light. She hit save, emailed the draft to her editor, and leaned back, exhaustion mingling with a flicker of pride. The story was done, but her fight wasn't. The cafe door jingled, and Rachel's eyes flicked up, her pulse spiking as a man in a leather jacket stepped in, his hands scarred. She tensed, her hand brushing the pepper spray in her bag, but he passed without a glance. Ordering coffee, she exhaled, cursing her paranoia, but the SUV driver's shadow lingered. An unsolved piece of the puzzle. Detective Harris had found no trace of him, no link to Mickey, leaving Rachel to wonder if he was a hired thug or something darker, a loose end she couldn't tie. She left the cafe, her rented Ford, parked under a street lamp, and drove to a small cemetery on Tulsa's outskirts, where Paul and Lily's remains, identified by DNA, had been laid to rest. The funeral, funded by a community moved by Rachel's early articles, had been simple but poignant, their shared headstone reading Paul and Lily, together forever. Rachel knelt, placing a single white lily by the grave, her throat tight. "I kept me promise," she whispered, the keychain heavy in her pocket. She'd returned it to their family, Paul's aging father in Colorado, but kept a photo, a reminder of why she'd fought. The town of Sapulpa, where Mickey's trailer once stood, had changed since the trial. The junkyard, now under new management, bore a plaque near its entrance in memory of Paul and Lily. 1985. Truth prevails. It was unveiled at a ceremony Rachel attended. The crowd, small but solemn, their faces etched with grief and gratitude. A local pastor spoke of justice delayed but not denied, and Rachel, standing at the back, felt the weight of her role, not a hero, but a stubborn seeker of truth. Her book, published in spring 2001, hit shelves with quiet force, its cover a stark image of a crushed red Cadillac under a stormy sky. Reviews called it a haunting exposé, and it climbed bestseller lists, sparking television interviews and a Dateline special. Rachel hated the spotlight, but she used it, speaking at schools and libraries about Paul and Lily, urging others to chase buried truths. The royalties funded a scholarship in Lily's name for single parents' children, a nod to Paul's struggles, but the attention drew shadows too. Late one night, Rachel's phone rang. The caller ID blocked. A raspy voice growled. "You should have stopped." She hung up, her heart racing, and checked her locks. The pepper spray, now a constant companion. Harris traced the call to a burner phone. A dead end. But Rachel suspected the SUV driver, still out there. His motives unclear. She moved to a new apartment, installed a security system, and kept digging. Her journalist's instinct unyielding, a tip from a junkyard worker, now retired, offered a final clue in 1985. Mickey had bragged about knowing people who cleaned up messes. Rachel chased the lead, finding no names but a pattern other cars, other disappearances, buried in the junkyard's records. She passed it to Harris, who opened a task force, the case rippling beyond Paul and Lily. The work was grueling, but it grounded her, a purpose born from pain. By summer 2001, Rachel stood at the sepulchre plaque, the sun warm on her face. A crowd gathered for the anniversary of the trial's verdict. A young girl, maybe 8, Lily's age, laid a flower at the plaque, her mother whispering, "They're at peace now." Rachel's eyes stung. The memory of Lily's blue shoe, in the wreckage sharp but softening, like a wound beginning to heal. She'd never forget the cost, the sleepless nights, the brushes with death, the fear that lingered. But she'd found something to strength, not just in herself, but in the community that rallied, in the truth that endured. Back at her apartment, Rachel opened a letter from Paul's father, his shaky handwriting thanking her. "You gave us closure. You gave them a voice." She framed it, hanging it beside a photo of the Cadillac, its red paint vibrant in a 1985 snapshot. The book's success had given her a platform, but the letter was her true reward. She sat at her desk, a new story forming, about another cold case, another family waiting. The phone rang again, another blocked number, but Rachel let it go to voicemail. Her fear no longer a cage. She'd faced Mickey, faced death, and come out standing. The SUV driver, whoever he was, would have to try harder. Osh nooit fel. Rachel walked to her balcony, the Tulsa skyline glittering. She held the keychain's photo, her fingers tracing P and L forever. The darkness of 1985 was gone, replaced by a light she'd helped kindle. Paul and Lily's story, once buried in a junkyard, now lived in every reader, every flower at their grave, every child who'd grow up knowing justice could prevail. Rachel smiled, a quiet promise to keep fighting. For them, for herself, for the truth still waiting to be found. Paul and Lily's disappearance in a red Cadillac unravels a 15-year mystery, solved by Rachel's relentless pursuit of truth. Thanks for listening. Like, share, and subscribe to catch our latest stories. Don't miss out. Hit the bell for notifications.